been leading up to this idea of revolutionary love. And I think some of the others we can kind of take, I do want to speak out against the world system and the world's idea of love, but I want us to be encouraged as well, that I think this is what this group can be known for, is known for, and I want to encourage that, is revolutionary, genuine love, real love. Just like that was saying, we hear that all the time, the word love. English, unfortunately, doesn't have enough words for love. We kind of just have the one that covers everything. And so we have to define it constantly, because I love my wife, I love my dog, and I love coffee, like it said. I'm not going to tell you the ranking, but I certainly know Deb's probably. Ginny's right up there. We're neck and neck most of the time, depending on how the day is going. But, we everything ranging from infatuation to, every love song ever written to, like we said, I like my favorite food or love. So I want us to talk a little bit about that. The world system, though, usually has counterfeit love. I was thinking about something counterfeit. Something counterfeit is something that is purposely made to deceive, to make you think one thing is another. Has any of you ever had an actual counterfeit bill without, not in a museum or something, but like you ended up with a counterfeit bill? Anybody? It's a mess, right? And I was thinking of some counterfeit things in my life. I have accidentally purchased I like to go to like Goodwill to buy most of my clothing. I know you look at me and go, boy, that doesn't seem true. Because I'm such high fashion. See, that's the joke. But I've accidentally bought counterfeit clothes there that I get them home and they don't fit the same. We had a pair of, Birkenstocks are the kind of expensive sandals. I love them. We had them ever since high school. My family was kind of Birkenstock people. And when the kids were in high school, we bought a pair we called them the Fakenstocks. There's not one natural fiber on these things. It was all petroleum-based leather and cork and stuff. The weird thing with those is they lasted for forever. And because of the way they were made, we realized everyone in our family could wear them. They kind of fit all of us. And so we'd leave them by the front door so that if anyone had to run get the mail or you had to go out and do something, you'd put on the Fakenstocks. And those things lasted until about 2 years ago. And they were constantly out. So we've been trying to find the Fakenstocks, but sadly now there's fake Fakenstocks. The ones that we've purchased since then have all been not lasted as long. So there's a counterfeit of a counterfeit. At the camp one year when I worked at Island Lake, I decided it was raining, so I was going to buy an Atari and hook it up to the giant projector, and I thought that'd be kind of a funny thing to play Pong or something like that. But it was not. I realized later it wasn't an Atari, it was like an Atari. Didn't work. The worst, though, are like things you get in the mail, a fake check. Marketers use that thing when it's like, it looks like a check and it looks like handwritten, but it's really just a sales ploy, or a fake credit card or fake loan paperwork. Clicking on a malware email, so many emails are counterfeit, or all those kind of scams that come and destroy what you're doing. I don't know about you, I don't want counterfeit, I want real. Whether it's bills, dollars, whether it's checks, whether it's Birkenstocks, I want the real thing. It's better. And I don't want counterfeit. But the world finds it so much easier and cheaper and trickier to use something counterfeit. And that's the way it is with the world's love. Counterfeit love, the way things are, the thing we've kind of our format for this series has been how are things are, and then what is Jesus revolting against? What is revolutionary about the way Jesus calls us and lived? So counterfeit love, the way things are, how does the world love? Just a couple of verses and some of it just implies it's a negative example, like this is how we should be, not like this. So Romans 12:9. And this again, I talk about this one a lot because there's so many verses that are just so concise. Romans 12:9, don't just pretend to love others, really love them. Hate what is wrong, hold tightly to what is good. Counterfeit is pretend love. Fake love. This kind of love that the world has, that the world system creates, and that offers, they embrace the wrong things. They love what is wrong. So we're supposed to, real love loves what is good. Counterfeit loves what is wrong, what is evil, what is hateful, and it eschews what is right. It is contrary to the real thing. Pretending to love. So much easier sometimes. Counterfeit love is pretending to love. 1 John 4:20. If someone says, I love God, but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people, how can that we can see, how can we love God that we cannot see? Counterfeit love says, I love, but that's where it ends. It's a statement not based in fact. That's as deep as it goes, just as a statement. And if we say, hey, I love you, but we don't act loving, it's not true. If we say, especially if we say we love God, we're of God, that we love everybody, and that we hate people, we treat people with hate, we don't love God. And I love that argument there. By the way, if you can't love somebody that you can actually see and touch and hug and be around, how are you supposed to love a God that you can never speak to or hear audibly or see in the flesh? It's not right. How can fake love loves what's in front of their eyes and easy to grasp? Counterfeit love looks like love and even has some of the trappings of love and some of the elements of real love, but upon closer examination, it just isn't love. Right? The world system refers to this invisible philosophy and secular philosophies and structures and organizations and that are in direct opposition to God. And not attacking, not necessarily, sometimes when we think of enemies of God, we think it has to be somebody who's just all about hate and they're spouting, but it's more likely to be a counterfeit. That it tricks us. It pretends to be loving, and it's not. It equates self-worth and wealth and physical appearance and achievement and promises quick fixes. That's the kind of love that is counterfeit love. There are three things that I think are common about counterfeit love. First, it's transactional. Counterfeit love, world system love, is transaction. Transaction is why I give you something, you give me something. Go to the store. I'm going to give you money, you give me cucumber. I don't know. That was a weird thing to pop into my head, but you can think I'm thinking of making a salad later. So, right? You give something and you get something, and that's counterfeit love is transactional. Look, it's all about, hey, I'll love you because you're going to love me. I'll love you because I'm getting something. And often that's the way relationships start. Unless that works well, unless I change my mind or I quit wanting what you have to offer or I get a better offer. It's transactional. It only lasts as long as the transaction is good. It loves as long as my needs are met, as favors are returned, and our expectations align. We only love those who can and will love us back. I think when it boils down to it, so often that's what it is. I'm going to love you as long as I know I'm going to get back what I need. We love those who will make us better. I was watching a show the other day, and it was kind of getting deep for a minute. It was talking about, should this people be together? And he says, do they make you a better person? And I thought, I understand the sentiment there, but that's not the point. It's not transactional. I'm not going to love you if you promise to make me better. It requires, transactional love requires that we are constantly evaluating people to see their value and see based on my needs and my wants. Constantly evaluating. People begin to have no intrinsic value as humans and become merely commodities for us to use. If that's how we're deciding to love somebody, to make sure that we get back what we need. Transactional love also inflates our value. If we're always evaluating somebody to see if they're good enough to love, if they can give me what I want, we begin to think we're better. Right? I'm worth way more. We become prideful and arrogant or face the reality that we are just people. And we have to pretend. So when we pretend we're better, when we increase our own value, when we begin to think we're better than we are, sometimes it's painful. We can painfully look and go, oh, we're just normal people. But that's painful. And again, it's all transaction. I want to be worth more than somebody else and seem more valuable so that they'll love me. So we begin to pretend. We begin to lie. We begin to act like we're better, more pure, that we're better than we really are. So much, and again, we're all old people for the most part, with one exception, right? When we were dating, it was all about, there's all the advice you see out there dating, especially now that there's kind of this toxic masculinity stuff, is all about how to trick the other gender, the person you're trying to date, into thinking that you're a high-value person. That's actually the language of today. You want to date somebody who's a high-value person, whether it's because of their looks or their wealth or their, positivity or their attitude or their ability to get things done. And we need to realize, you know what, we all have high, we'll talk about that later, but instead of deciding someone has intrinsic value as a human being, we puff ourselves up, and then we're constantly saying, who's at my level or who can make me look better? Counterfeit love is transactional. Counterfeit love is conditional. It's temporary. The material world and its desires are passing away, right? Counterfeit love, fake love is temporary. You hear about people falling out of love, right? I just don't love them anymore. I've heard that often as a pastor, dealing with people. I'm just not in love anymore. And what that means is that we must, and somebody else must, constantly prove themselves to be worthy of us. Again, we're judgmental and we're evaluating them because I love you as long as A, B, and C, as long as you're what I'm looking for, as long as you're doing what I want, as long as you're living the way I want, then I'll love you. People are constantly on approval. Do you remember that phrase? You don't hear it much anymore. It used to be when you'd put something on layaway or something. Before they had credit cards, you would get something on approval. Like, we treat people like 90-day test on a mattress. Right? You get to keep this, and yeah, you know what? I tried to love you, but you're just not living up to it. Once I got to know you, you breathe weird, and you chew funny, and we don't like the same shows. Right? That puts people on approval. We create these red lines, these barriers that cause us to refuse to love or show compassion or forgiveness. And I'm not talking about boundaries, like legitimate, healthy boundaries and safety, but I'm talking about those things where we just decide, I just don't want to be bothered with that anymore. And you know what happens? The phenomena that I notice is somebody who, and again, not just in a romantic state, but in just a friendship or even family at times, that sometimes we go, we're getting along, but as soon as, especially in friendships, as soon as we're not getting what we want out of it, it doesn't just go to neutral. Often it goes immediately to the other side. Now not only do we, I kind of liked you, but something happened, or you're being a way I don't like, and now not only do I not love you, I kind of hate you. It quickly turns to hate. That happens with food sometimes. By the way, I had the pickle thing. Delicious, thank you. Blueberry muffins. There was a time when I was in college, Costco started making, have you ever had the Costco blueberry muffin that's the size of a volleyball? And they were amazing, and I loved them. And I got the flu, though, after eating a blueberry muffin. I'm not going to describe in detail, but you can let your imagination run wild. I could not eat a blueberry muffin for years. Something that I loved, and then it kind of didn't do it for me anymore, and then I turned to hate it. When we have expectations that for someone, we kind of expect them to be a certain way, we put them in a category, we like them the way they were, and they begin to change, they begin to grow, or the circumstances change, we can lose the impetus that made us like them, that made us want to love them. Because of what was it? It was all based on how the transaction, remember? And then that becomes conditional. When something that used to make us feel good and now doesn't, we evaluate it much harsher, and instead of turning to just less love, it turns to hate. This leads us to being in fear ourselves. If we're going to love somebody else unconditional, we suddenly have that aha moment when oh no, maybe their love for me is conditional. And I better never change, I better never disappoint, I better always be good, I better always be pleasing, and that creates all sorts of emotional and psychological and spiritual problems. It leads to constantly demanding approval, defensiveness, and hiding flaws and faults. Because if we have conditional love for somebody else, we realize, they may be for us, and I never want to be unloved. We are not our true selves, and we don't want to see the true selves of others with counterfeit love. Counterfeit love is all about what someone offers, what someone else can do to fulfill the emptiness in my soul. It's about selfishness. It is self-focus and pride. It revolves around keeping my status, my ego, and my situation, accumulating wealth and pleasure and status. What can I get? The Bible calls that the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That I'm going to love somebody, and why I love them is they make me feel really good and they do stuff for me. Something about them makes me feel good. We have empty spots in our soul. We have parts of us that must be fulfilled by relationship. We're created to be in relationship. But that is supposed to be filled by relationship with God and a giving relationship with others. I'm giving away the end here. And when we begin to demand that our emptiness be filled by another person who is imperfect in themselves, and hopefully that they are growing and changing, then that's a recipe for disaster. When it's all about me. Counterfeit love is offered in hopes of filling those empty spaces in our lives. This is the culmination of all those other aspects of counterfeit love. This is all about making sure I am fulfilled all the time, and that we have a transactional thing. I'll love you, I'll do for you if you do for me, and then you better keep up with this, because if you quit fulfilling me, if you quit being what makes me happy, then this is over. You got to make sure you live up to the contract that we had. Right? It's ironic that we as imperfect people, because we're imperfect, we have these empty spaces, we have these painful spaces in our lives that we want to have fulfilled, and we look to other flawed people who are incapable of fulfilling it for themselves, yet alone for us. And then we get mad at them for being imperfect, flawed people just like we are. So we demand what the other can never perfectly provide, and we get angry and unhappy and disillusioned and hurt. And any unmet need leads to anger eventually. Right? Christians, we call it frustrated. Or parents. I'm not angry, I'm just frustrated. That's a mom thing. Dad is frustrated, mom is disappointed. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. All right? How do we describe the counterfeit love? Just a few things from, you may have heard these before. Counterfeit love is proud and boastful and jealous. Counterfeit love demands to get its own way. Counterfeit love is irritable and holds grudges. By the way, counterfeit love decides what is best for another and attempts to dominate, judge, legislate, force, manipulate, scare, shame, punish, and demand compliance or submission, and then calls that love. Christians are really guilty of this. If you've ever heard of the Crusades, or today, some of this that we think, hey, what's most loving for somebody else is for them to be a Christian. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to beat them until they become a Christian. I'm going to shame them, force them, because really that's going to be best. So any hateful means necessary to make them agree with me. That's not love. That's coercion. So what do we do? I think we need to do this. I'm going to keep it really simple. How do we make sure we don't have counterfeit love? Always examine your love. You ever go to the grocery store? I'm always a little offended when I give them a bill and they do this thing. They have that little marker, hold it up to the light. I have friends that do, family members who do that with me, and that seems just extra hurtful. Right? Do a love inventory. Who do I love? Who do I experience love fading, and why? Am I getting irritable? Am I wishing I could get out of this? And I'm not talking like just friendships, relationships. Is there somebody that I'm kind of turned on, and why? And if my first instinct, can go through all the things that you're mad about with them, and then when you get to the end of that, then look in the mirror. Oh yeah. This is a transaction that's not happening anymore. These are my conditions that I set for them, and that's not happening anymore. I have an emptiness that they're not fulfilling anymore. Or I've realized that they can never fulfill. That's counterfeit love. Who do I hate that I used to love? So periodically, let's do that. This week, just spend some time thinking of all the relationships, especially those that are difficult now. And again, I'm not talking about healthy boundaries. I'm not even saying that those relationships have to be the same as they ever were, but let's make sure we don't have hate. Let's make sure that we're not especially offering counterfeit love. Instead, let's have revolutionary love. Deb and I took a little quick trip to Spirit Lake, Idaho to be with my cousin for a couple days. And normally I come up with really creative names and try and alliterate stuff during, and that usually happens on Thursday. But Thursday we were taking, as Chuck says, the 5-hour trip up to Spokane area. That's really, he lies, it's 8 hours, let's just be honest, from this side of the water. I don't know what speed you're driving.
I'm in the left lane.
He's like, yeah. But, so I just I had to have this done on Wednesday, which I was not as creative. So you'll notice Revolutionary Love shows up in the title, and in the main title, and then as a point. So just roll with it, people, right? Revolutionary love, what it should be. Jesus is revolutionary love. Luke 6:35. Love your enemies. Do good to them. Here's where it gets tough. I think we can all go, yeah, I love my enemy. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Then your high reward from heaven will be very great, and you will be truly acting as children of the Most High, for he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. I can be kind to the wicked, but somebody unthankful, if I do something kind, kind of want to be thanked. Right? Revolutionary love is not in that game of transaction and conditions. Enemies are not just people who actively hate us. They're people who just refuse to go our way, refuse to believe us, refuse to go the way we want. And we're supposed to love them, whoever the them is for you. That I can get along with everybody except for blank. Whether it's a personality type, there can be all sorts of things. Maybe things you don't want to admit out loud. That there are people or groups or types of people that you don't want to love. That's who you're supposed to love. And when we go, okay, well, good. I can say, well, yeah, I love them, which is easy to say. That's counterfeit love. But here Jesus says, oh, and let me tell you how far it should go. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a tip. Lend to an enemy, and then don't expect or demand to get it back. Give it, but do so that they have dignity. I threw that in there because you could say just give to your enemy, but he says no, lend it to him. There's something mental that happens when we say I'm lending it to you. Have you ever have somebody that you're like, I'm going to lend this to you, because it gives them some dignity. It doesn't feel like just charity. He's saying for the person you can't stand and the person who looks at you and says I'm your enemy, we're supposed to lend to them, give to them, not just material stuff, but ourselves, our love, and realize they may never give it back and we're never going to demand it. And in fact, they may even be ungrateful. For a lot of us, that's our limit. I'm going to give you a chance. I did something nice to you, and you don't got to give it back, but you got to say thank you. I will not be disrespected. That's a tough one for me. That's a failing I have. I want to admit to you folks, when I'm preaching about some of this stuff, I do not want to act like I've got it figured out, like I'm doing it. This is a tough one. I want to be thanked. And for Christians, especially that thing where we say, well, this is the most loving thing to do. I'm going to be dominating you and I'm going to kind of force you into believing. He's saying, look, you got to love those not only who are unthankful, but then they go on and continue to be wicked. You still got to love. Kind of like Jesus did, by the way. He gave himself without expecting anything in return. What are we going to give Jesus, who sacrificed his life, who came to earth to be a human? And again, man, sometimes I hate to kind of go to just use the same things, but this one is, I have to do this. 1 Corinthians 13, right? Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. There's an actual description in the Bible, and anytime we're debating somebody about what's most loving, and they want to get into this argument about what's most loving is to do this thing that seems kind of hateful, we can always say, you know what, we actually have a list. Let's check that list. Let's check about what you're saying we should do to exclude them from the social system, to make sure they can't vote, to make sure they don't get help, to make sure they don't get aid. Let's see if this fits in here. What did God say love is? Are we being patient and kind? Or are we being proud and boastful? Are we demanding our way? Are we irritable? Are we holding grudges? Do I want justice and truth? Am I hopeful and enduring? That's real love. And then John 3:16. I'm using all the classics today. If you've ever watched a football game, you've seen this. For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. And the key I wanted to bring here is the word gave. God showed love by giving. By giving. Freely giving of himself, so that we might live without anything we can do for him. God loves our worship. God loves our service. God loves our relationship, but he doesn't need it. Just gave. That is the profound nature of Jesus' love toward us, that it becomes the example of love that we should have for everyone else. Bunch of verses. Man, do a little study on how Jesus loved. There's a ton. I will say this, usually my Saturday night is trying to edit down. I know that you're all going, how long would these be if you didn't edit on Saturday night? But cutting out so much stuff, there's just so much in here. Right? The love of Jesus, the revolutionary love of Jesus, offers a completely reversed value system. We've talked about the upside-down kingdom. The first is last and the last is first. So let's do this quickly. Instead of a transactional love, there's others-centered love, putting the needs of others above my own, service-centered. The priority is care for those that may or may not ever be able to care for me, without regard for their ability to somehow pay me back in any way, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. We're supposed to just care. Right? And even though we may never get thanked, one of the great parts of being a parent of adult children is once in a while, we have that gem of a moment when one of your kids comes back and says, you know, you were right. Right? This is hard. Or I should have opened an IRA, or whatever they're saying. Right? I shouldn't have bought that car. No matter what it is, those moments where they say you were right. But we may never get that. We're still called to love. How can I serve? How do we care for someone? It is defined by a radical call to humility and servanthood. That is the truth of God's love. Serving the neighbor is the most important thing. Second to loving God, the next most important thing we're supposed to do is serve our neighbor. Active service and care. Right? We're supposed to offer mercy and grace. And that keeps us from inflating our value and makes sure we inflate others, that we see others with the dignity and the value that God has for them. They're worthy of being served. Instead of conditional, unconditional. Demonstrated that while we are still flawed and you are still flawed, I'm still going to extend grace and love despite rejection. The best example of this is the rich young ruler. We've talked about that recently, right? He was rich and powerful and spiritual. He comes to Jesus and he said, we just talked about this a couple weeks ago. He was like, hey, what do I have to do to get into heaven? And Jesus says, well, you got to follow all these rules, all the laws. And he goes, oh, good, I got that wired. And he was a good get for that early movement, right? He was rich and powerful and he was spiritual. And Jesus goes, oh yeah, one more thing. You got to sell everything you've got. If you really want to follow me, and this was practically, right? Remember we talked about this, that to actually follow Jesus, be one of the disciples, he couldn't carry around all his stuff in a wagon. He's like, yeah, if you really want to do this, you physically, literally have to sell everything because that's what we do. We got nothing. And he was sad and he couldn't do it. But there's this beautiful sentence in the middle of that. In Mark 10, it says, in the middle of this scene, Jesus looks at him and says, he loved him. Kind of the antithesis of Jesus' whole message. This guy's standing there and rejecting him. And Jesus looks at him and loves him. When someone says when they come and visit Restore Church and leave, it is hard for me to love them. I love you guys. I don't want to be offended, but Jesus looked at somebody who said, yeah, I don't want any of that. And it's like, I love Unconditional love finds its power and its energy from God and the ability to be confident in our place in the world and relationship with him so that we can have relationship with you without demanding I get back. You don't have to live up to a standard because God's already cared for me. And then the fulfillment of that. Instead of love offered to fulfill emptiness and selfishness, it is outpouring from the fullness that we have from God. Christ's love, God's love for us is eternal and overwhelming and fulfilling, and we are able to love others because he loved us. We don't need to take from you. We don't need to demand from you. We don't need to have a transaction. We have a love from God that we are able to love others because it flows out of us. 1 John 4:19, we love each other because he loved us first. We can offer mercy and grace because we have received mercy and grace. And if we're having trouble loving people, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we've removed barriers from experiencing the love of God. So, Jesus calls us to love others the same way he loved, which is sacrificial to all people. I have a whole bunch written here, but I'm going to leave it at that sentence. Sacrificial love to all people. Our enemies, people we don't like, people that we used to like, people that we really like. The way we show love is sacrificing, serving, offering dignity, grace, mercy, and justice to all people. And revolutionary love wants what is best for the other person and attempts to demonstrate that by actual, recognizable care that shows absolute acceptance of where someone is and compassionately invites them to a life of grace and deeper love. Rather than demanding they change the behavior and force them, we invite them to know God and be loved as we are. So I want to leave it with this. Your assignment is to love with all of our hearts, our God and the people around us. Don't say it, live it. Let me pray and we'll end. God, thank you for the fact that you love us. And we talk about it all the time, and sometimes I feel like I'm just repeating myself, God, but I want us to know and to live in the place where we realize we are loved so that we actually can sacrificially, without fear of not having enough, without fear of being hurt, acknowledge that we could be hurt. We might not have what we want, but know that you are enough for us. Help us to be content with your love so that we can offer revolutionary love that catches people off guard. When they think they're our enemy, we should give them love. And help us to do that completely on our own. Offer grace and mercy that requires no repayment because you have already paid the price. God, we love you and we thank you and we praise you today. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't usually do this, but I have two verses for, you can tell how much I had for this week. Two benediction verses. Ephesians 5:2. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. And 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. May we be people who refuse to love others with the world's counterfeit love that is transactional and conditional and selfish, and instead love with the revolutionary love of Jesus that is others-centered, unconditional, and empowered by the love which we have received from God, to the glory of God and the flourishing of our neighbors.